When corporate lawyer Natalie Chen is publicly humiliated at her law firm's annual gala by the partners who've been sabotaging her career for years, she chooses silence over confrontation. What they don't know is that she spent months gathering evidence of their multi-million-dollar fraud scheme, and tonight's mockery just became their biggest mistake. Subscribe to our channel for real stories of revenge, justice, and personal redemption. The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as partner Richard Blackwood's voice boomed across the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel in downtown San Francisco. And let's not forget our little associate Natalie, who still hasn't managed to bill a single client this quarter without needing someone to hold her hand. Laughter rippled through the crowd of 200 attorneys, paralegals, and clients. I stood frozen near the dessert table, my black Armani gown suddenly feeling like a costume I had no right to wear. The string quartet in the corner seemed to pause, as if even the music wanted to witness my humiliation. My name is Natalie Chen. I'm 27 years old, and until this moment, I thought I'd experienced every flavor of professional degradation that Morrison, Blackwood, and Associates could serve. I was wrong. Richard continued his impromptu roast, his face flushed with expensive scotch and the confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences. 6 years of Stanford law, folks, and she still can't draft a simple contract without 3 rounds of revisions. Makes you wonder about great inflation, doesn't it? More laughter. I recognized some of the faces: junior associates I'd mentored, secretaries I'd helped, clients whose cases I'd actually won while senior partners took credit. Their eyes slid away from mine, embarrassed witnesses to an execution they were too cowardly to stop. Senior partner Margaret Chen, no relation, though she loved pointing out that her family's Chen was the important one from Shanghai, not whatever province yours crawled out of, added her melodious poison to the mix. Now, Richard, be fair. Natalie does have her strengths. She makes excellent coffee. And her ability to work 80-hour weeks while we bill clients for her time at premium rates? Invaluable. The room erupted. Even some of the servers were smirking. What would you have done in my place? Fought back? Walked out? I did neither. Instead, I smiled. A small, knowing smile that didn't reach my eyes. I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast, took a deliberate sip, and walked calmly to the ladies' room, my heels clicking against the marble floor with measured precision. Because I knew something they didn't. In my purse, tucked next to my lipstick and keys, was a USB drive containing 18 months of evidence documenting how Morrison, Blackwood, and Associates had been systematically defrauding their biggest client, Vanguard Technologies, of approximately $4.2 million through inflated hours, fabricated expenses, and phantom legal services. And tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And that USB drive would be in the hands of both the State Bar Association and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. The bathroom was a sanctuary of white marble and gold fixtures, mercifully empty. I locked myself in the furthest stall and finally allowed my hands to shake. The adrenaline that had kept me upright during the public mockery was wearing off, replaced by a cocktail of rage and vindication that made my pulse thunder in my ears. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend and former colleague, Maya Rodriguez, who'd left the firm 6 months ago after her own battle with the partners. Tell me you're recording this nightmare. Please tell me you have a plan. I typed back with trembling fingers. Better than a plan. I have evidence. And tomorrow, I have justice. 3 dots appeared then. Finally. I knew you were playing the long game. Want company tonight? Rain check. I need to prep my exit strategy. This is about to get messy. Burn it down, Nat. Burn it all down. I stared at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. My mother's jade pendant hung at my throat, a graduation gift she'd saved for months to buy on her nurse's salary. You're the first Chen to become a lawyer, she'd said, tears in her eyes. Make us proud. I'd tried so hard to make them proud. Graduated top of my class at Stanford. Passed the California bar on my first attempt. Joined Morrison, Blackwood, and Associates as a starry-eyed 24-year-old who believed that hard work and merit would be enough. What a naive fool I'd been. The warning signs had been there from day one. The way Richard Blackwood had looked at my resume and said, Stanford, impressive. Diversity hire? The way Margaret Chen had pulled me aside during my first week to explain that while she appreciated the optics of having another Asian woman at the firm, I shouldn't expect special treatment based on shared ethnicity. The way my billable hours mysteriously disappeared from client accounts, only to reappear under senior partners' names. The way my research and case strategies were presented as their ideas in court. The way I was simultaneously overworked and undervalued, crucial to operations but invisible in recognition. I'd documented everything, every stolen brief, every falsified timesheet, every discriminatory comment disguised as mentorship. And when I'd accidentally discovered the Vanguard fraud while organizing old files in the archives room 6 months ago, I'd known exactly what to do with it. I'd become a ghost, a silent observer. A woman so thoroughly dismissed that no one noticed I was paying attention. The bathroom door swung open, admitting a burst of music and laughter from the ballroom. I recognized the voice immediately. Christina Yang, a third-year associate who'd started the same year as me but had somehow managed to befriend the right people and avoid the systematic sabotage I'd endured. "Did you see Natalie's face?" Christina was saying to someone. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But honestly, if you can't handle the pressure, maybe corporate law isn't for you. "Richard was brutal tonight," another woman's voice replied. I didn't recognize this one. "Even for him. He's been drinking since lunch," Christina said. I heard the click of a compact opening, the swish of a makeup brush. Apparently, the Vanguard audit didn't go well. Something about billing discrepancies. He and Margaret have been in crisis mode all week. My heart rate accelerated. The audit. I'd heard whispers about it, but hadn't realized it had already begun. Vanguard Technologies had finally noticed the irregularities in their legal bills and had hired an independent forensic accountant to review 3 years of invoices. The investigation I was about to trigger would dovetail perfectly with their existing concerns. "Think they'll find anything?" the unknown woman asked. Christina laughed, sharp and cynical. "In this place? Probably. But they're partners. They'll blame it on some associate and move on. They always do." "Poor Natalie," the woman said, but her tone suggested she found the situation more amusing than tragic. "She's probably crying in one of these stalls right now." I held my breath, pressing myself against the cool tile wall. "She should quit," Christina declared. "Save herself the embarrassment. No one at this firm respects her. Hell, half the clients don't even know her name. She's basically a very expensive intern." They left, their laughter trailing behind them like toxic perfume. I waited a full minute before emerging from the stall. My reflection looked different now, sharper, harder, ready. The woman who'd walked into this bathroom was still clinging to the hope that maybe, somehow, she could salvage her career at this firm. The woman who walked out knew better. Some institutions can't be reformed from within. They have to be dismantled. Back at the gala, the party had shifted into its late-night phase. The older partners had retreated to the private cigar lounge, while the younger associates had clustered around the open bar, their ties loosened and inhibitions lowered. I navigated the edges of the room, a professional smile fixed on my face, accepting sympathetic looks from a few genuinely kind colleagues and avoiding everyone else. "Natalie," a hand on my elbow. I turned to find James Morrison III, the founding partner's grandson and the firm's only decent human being. At 32, James had the kind of old money handsomeness that came from generations of good nutrition and better dentistry. Sandy blonde hair, blue eyes, a jaw that belonged on a cologne advertisement. "Can we talk? Privately?" We ended up on the hotel's terrace overlooking the glittering expanse of San Francisco Bay. The October air was crisp, carrying the salt and fog scent that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this city despite everything it had cost me. "I'm sorry about tonight," James said without preamble. Richard was out of line. They all were. I studied his face, searching for mockery or pity, found only genuine concern. "Why are you apologizing? You didn't say anything." "Exactly," he said quietly. "I stood there and let it happen. We all did. And that's just as bad." James Morrison III was a complicated figure at the firm. As the founding partner's grandson, he could have coasted on nepotism alone. Instead, he actually worked. Long hours, difficult cases, real results. He'd tried repeatedly to mentor me, to shield me from the worst of the firm's toxicity. But he was still just one voice against a chorus of entitled cruelty. "It's fine," I lied. "I'm used to it. That's the problem, Natalie. You shouldn't have to be used to it." He leaned against the terrace railing, his expression troubled. "I've been trying to convince my grandfather to restructure the partnership. Bring in fresh leadership. People who actually value merit over whatever the hell Richard and Margaret value." "Money," I supplied. "Power. The ability to humiliate people without consequences." He winced. "Yeah, that." A pause. "I know you've been looking at other firms. Maya told me before she left that you had interviews lined up. I had. 3 months ago, I'd quietly reached out to Morrison, Blackwood, and Associates competitors. But word had gotten back to Richard somehow, probably through one of his golf buddies, and suddenly every opportunity had dried up. Mysterious references that damned with faint praise. Whispered concerns about my cultural fit and communication style. They'd blacklisted me without ever saying it directly. Those didn't work out, I said carefully. James's jaw tightened. Let me guess. Richard made some calls. I can't prove it. You shouldn't have to prove it. It's illegal, it's unethical, and it's exactly the kind of thing he'd do. He turned to face me fully. Natalie, I want to help you. Tell me what you need. A reference letter? An introduction to my contacts at other firms? Money for a few months' rent while you find something new? The offer was genuine, and it touched something in me I'd thought had calcified into pure cynicism. Why? I asked. Why do you care? Because you're brilliant, he said simply. Your work on the Harrison merger last year saved us from a catastrophic lawsuit, but Richard took all the credit. Your research on the Chen vs. State of California case, no relation to you, I know, ironic name coincidence, that's being cited in appellate courts across the country, but Margaret's name is on the brief. You've generated millions in revenue for this firm, and they treat you like you're disposable. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. And because my grandfather built this firm on principles that meant something. Integrity, excellence, justice, and watching what it's become, it's killing him, even if he won't admit it. It's killing me. I believed him. James Morrison III was one of the good ones, trapped in a corrupt system he was trying to fix from within. And maybe, in another timeline, I would have accepted his help and walked away to build a career somewhere else. But I'd already chosen a different path. Thank you, I said softly. Really, but I don't need rescue. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I need to finish something first, and then we'll see. He studied me with new intensity. You're planning something. I'm always planning something. I'm a lawyer. Natalie. His voice dropped. Whatever you're thinking, be careful. Richard and Margaret are dangerous when cornered. They have connections, resources. So do I interrupted. Maybe not their kind of resources, but I have something they don't. What's that? The truth. I smiled, and this time it was genuine. And patience. Lots and lots of patience. Understanding dawned in his eyes. How long have you been gathering evidence? Long enough. I glanced at my watch, a vintage Rolex my grandmother had given me, one of the few luxuries I owned. Nearly midnight. I should go. Big day tomorrow. Natalie, wait. He caught my hand. Whatever happens, whatever you've planned, if you need an ally, a witness, testimony, anything, call me, please. I squeezed his hand briefly. If it comes to that, I will. But James, you might want to distance yourself from the firm over the next few weeks. Things are about to get very complicated. I don't care about complicated. I care about right and wrong. Then we're on the same side. I released his hand and headed toward the exit. Good night, James, and thank you for seeing me when nobody else did. I left him standing on the terrace, silhouetted against the San Francisco skyline, and I wondered if he'd still thank me when he realized just how thoroughly I was about to burn his family's legacy to the ground. My apartment in the Mission District was a tiny one-bedroom that cost more than it should, and offered less than it promised. But it was mine. I decorated it with thrift store finds and IKEA furniture, creating a space that felt warm despite its size. My cat, Justice, named in a fit of law school idealism, greeted me at the door with accusatory meows about his delayed dinner. I know, I murmured, scratching behind his ears. Rough night for both of us. While Justice demolished his food, I changed out of my gala dress and into comfortable sweats, then made myself a cup of chamomile tea that I had no intention of drinking. Nerves had my stomach in knots. The USB drive sat on my coffee table, innocuous and devastating. 18 months of work condensed into digital evidence. Spreadsheets showing the discrepancy between hours worked and hours billed. Email chains discussing how to maximize revenue from the Vanguard account. Recorded conversations. California was a two-party consent state, but I'd been very careful about when and how I'd recorded, always ensuring legal compliance. Testimony from former employees who'd been fired for questioning the billing practices. And my personal favorite, Richard Blackwood's own handwritten notes from a partners meeting, where he'd explicitly outlined the strategy to redistribute Natalie's billables to maximize partner compensation and to maintain her at associate level indefinitely to preserve cost efficiency. In other words, they'd decided I was more valuable as an exploited worker bee than as a promoted colleague who might demand fair compensation and respect. My phone rang. Maya, right on schedule. Okay, she said without preamble. Tell me everything. And I mean everything, I told her. About Richard's public humiliation, about Christina's bathroom conversation, about James's offer on the terrace, about the audit that was apparently already underway at Vanguard. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual for Maya, who had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. So tomorrow's the day, she said when I finished. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. You know there's no going back, right? Once you submit that evidence, you're burning every bridge at that firm. Hell, you might be burning bridges across the entire San Francisco legal community. Richard and Margaret have friends everywhere. I know. They'll try to destroy you. Professionally, personally, any way they can. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about my mother, who'd worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for my law school applications. My father, who died when I was 15, but who'd always believed I could do anything I set my mind to. My younger brother, Daniel, who looked up to me as proof that first-generation kids could make it in America. I thought about every young associate who'd been chewed up and spit out by this industry. Every woman of color who'd been told she wasn't a cultural fit. Every brilliant mind that had been exploited for profit and discarded when inconvenient. I'm more than okay with it, I said. I'm ready. Maya was quiet for a moment. You know what? I believe you. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. This is going to hurt them where they live, in their wallets and their reputations. It's perfect. It's not about revenge, I said, though we both knew that was only partially true. It's about accountability. It's about making sure they can't do this to anyone else. It can be both, Maya said gently. Revenge and justice aren't mutually exclusive, especially when the people you're taking down genuinely deserve it. We talked for another hour, running through every possible scenario, every potential consequence. Maya had left Morrison, Blackwood & Associates to join a boutique firm specializing in employment law, and she'd already quietly agreed to represent me when, the firm tried to retaliate. Get some sleep, she finally said. Tomorrow you're going to need all your energy. But sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing my evidence one final time, making sure every document was properly organized, every claim was substantiated, every legal standard was met. I'd learned from the best, after all. Even if the best were also the worst. At 6 a.m., I showered, dressed in my most professional suit, navy blue Tahari, pearl earrings, minimal makeup, and prepared for what would either be the best or worst decision of my legal career. At 8 a.m., I walked into the downtown offices of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division and handed over my USB drive to Special Agent Patricia Morrison, coincidentally sharing a last name with the firm's founding partner, a detail I found grimly amusing. At 8:30, I submitted identical evidence to the State Bar Association's Ethics Committee, along with a formal complaint detailing the fraud, the discrimination, and the systematic exploitation. At 8:45, I sent a comprehensive summary to Vanguard Technologies' General Counsel, with a cover letter explaining that I was the associate who'd actually performed most of the legal work they'd been billed for at partner rates. And at 9 a.m., I walked into Morrison, Blackwood & Associates' gleaming downtown office for what I knew would be the last time. The receptionist, Gladys, greeted me with her usual warm smile. Morning, Natalie. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Thanks, Gladys. I accepted a cup, savoring what would be my last taste of the office's premium Colombian blend. Is Richard in yet? Conference room with Margaret and some suits I don't recognize. Been there since 7:30. They look stressed. The FBI worked fast. I'd expected a few days at least before the investigation became visible. But apparently, when you handed them evidence of multi-million-dollar fraud, complete with documentation and witnesses, they moved with impressive efficiency. I'm sure it's fine, I lied smoothly. Big case, probably. I went to my office, a windowless box barely large enough for my desk and filing cabinet, and began the process of packing my personal items. 6 years of my life reduced to 2 cardboard boxes, framed diplomas, a few photos, my favorite coffee mug, the small succulent plant that had somehow survived despite the fluorescent lighting. My computer was firm property, but I'd long since backed up anything personal to my cloud storage. They could forensically examine it all they wanted. They'd find nothing but exemplary legal work and meticulous documentation of every hour I'd billed. A sharp knock interrupted my packing. Richard Blackwood stood in my doorway, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His tie was crooked, his eyes were bloodshot, and a vein pulsed visibly in his temple. My office, now. I followed him through the corridors I'd walked thousands of times, past colleagues who avoided eye contact, past the conference rooms where I'd won cases that others took credit for, past the photographs of past partners, all white men, that lined the walls like a monument to exclusion. Richard's corner office was a temple to ego. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, a view of the Golden Gate Bridge that cost more in rent than my entire apartment. Margaret Chen was already there, perched on the edge of Richard's desk, like a sleek, predatory bird. "Sit down," Richard ordered. I sat, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap, the picture of professional composure. "We received some very disturbing communications this morning," Margaret began, her voice ice cold. "From the FBI, from the State Bar, from Vanguard Technologies. Communications containing allegations of fraud and ethical violations. Communications that appear to have originated from someone inside this firm." I said nothing. The allegations reference evidence that could only have been compiled by someone with internal access to our files, our billing systems, our confidential client communications, Richard continued. His hands were shaking slightly. Rage or fear, possibly both. Someone who betrayed the trust of this partnership. Someone who violated every principle of attorney-client privilege and firm loyalty. "Actually," I said calmly, "I was very careful about attorney-client privilege. Every piece of evidence I submitted relates to the firm's billing practices and internal communications, not to privileged client information. I know the difference. You taught me well." The admission hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Margaret's composure cracked first. "You little bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've reported fraud to the appropriate authorities," I replied. "Something you should have done yourselves when you first noticed the irregularities in the Vanguard billing. But you didn't. You profited from it instead." Richard's face had gone purple. "We will destroy you for this. Professionally, personally, we will make sure you never practice law again. We have connections you can't imagine. Judges, politicians, every major firm in this city will be very interested in the evidence I've provided showing systematic fraud and discrimination," I interrupted, "including the recorded conversations where you discuss how to keep me in my place and how to manage the optics of firing minority associates while maintaining your diversity statistics." For the first time, I saw fear flicker across both their faces. "You recorded us?" Margaret whispered. "That's illegal. In California, both parties must consent to recording," I agreed. "Which is why I only recorded conversations that took place in common areas where there was no reasonable expectation of privacy, or during meetings where I explicitly informed participants that I was recording for note-taking purposes. All perfectly legal. You might want to review the firm's policy on meeting documentation. You signed off on it 3 years ago." Richard slammed his hand on the desk. "You think you're clever? You think this is victory? We will sue you for everything you have. We'll file bar complaints. We'll make sure every lawyer in California knows your name and knows you can't be trusted." "Please do," I said, standing. "Every lawsuit you file will be public record. Every bar complaint will trigger its own investigation. And when the FBI's forensic accountants finish their audit, when the State Bar completes their ethics review, when Vanguard's attorneys depose every partner about the fraudulent billing, well, I'm sure all that publicity will be great for business." I picked up the box of personal items I'd brought with me. "I'm resigning, effective immediately. I'll email my formal letter within the hour. I've already transitioned all my active cases, the ones I was actually working on, not the ones you were billing under your names. You'll find complete files with my notes and recommendations for the associates who'll be taking over." "You can't just leave," Margaret sputtered. "You have obligations, cases pending." "I have nothing," I corrected. "You made that very clear last night. I'm just a diversity hire who can't draft a simple contract, remember? I'm sure you'll find someone much more competent to fill my role." I walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and Richard? You might want to talk to your attorney about the employment discrimination lawsuit Maya Rodriguez is filing on behalf of every minority associate who's left this firm in the past 5 years. She's been collecting evidence, too. Turns out I wasn't the only one paying attention. His face went from purple to gray. "Have a good day," I said pleasantly. "I'm sure the FBI agents will be gentle during the interviews." I walked out of that office with my head high, my box of belongings in my arms, and absolutely no regrets. The reception area had transformed into chaos. FBI agents were everywhere, along with what looked like forensic accountants carrying boxes of files. Associates huddled in corners whispering frantically. Paralegals openly cried. Gladys looked shell-shocked behind her desk. James Morrison III caught me at the elevator. "Natalie." "Jesus, the FBI? They work fast when you give them everything they need," I said, pressing the down button. "I tried to warn you last night." "I know. I just didn't realize." He ran his hand through his hair again, a tell of stress I'd learned to recognize. "This is going to destroy the firm." "The firm destroyed itself," I corrected. "I just documented it." The elevator arrived. I stepped inside, but James followed. "Where will you go?" he asked as we descended. "What will you do?" "I have some money saved. Maya's firm might have a position for me. Or maybe I'll take some time, figure out what kind of law I actually want to practice. The kind that helps people instead of exploiting them." We reached the ground floor. The elevator doors opened onto the marble lobby where I'd entered as a naive 24-year-old, convinced that merit and hard work would be enough. "For what it's worth," James said quietly. "I'm sorry for not doing more, for not stopping them sooner." "You tried," I acknowledged. "More than most. But James, this firm was rotten from the inside. You can't reform something that's fundamentally broken. Sometimes you have to let it burn so something better can grow from the ashes." "Very poetic," he said with a sad smile. "What will you tell your family?" "Your mother?" I thought about my mother who'd worked so hard to give me opportunities she'd never had, who'd be horrified at first, then proud when she understood why I'd done it. "The truth," I said. "That I stood up for what was right, even when it cost me everything. That's what she taught me to do." We stood there in the lobby, the weight of 6 years of struggle and injustice finally lifting from my shoulders. Through the glass doors, I could see San Francisco spreading out in autumn sunshine, full of possibility and second chances. "Good luck, Natalie Chen," James said. "I have a feeling you're going to be just fine. Better than fine. You too, James Morrison III. Try to save what's worth saving, and let the rest burn." I walked out into the sunshine, breathing in the salt air and car exhaust scent of the city I loved. My phone was already buzzing. Maya, my mother, reporters who'd somehow gotten my number already. The story was spreading fast. Associate blows whistle on major law firm fraud. I'd become exactly what they'd always feared. Visible, undeniable, impossible to ignore. 3 months later, Morrison, Blackwood & Associates filed for bankruptcy. Richard Blackwood and Margaret Chen were both disbarred and faced federal fraud charges. 15 associates, mostly women and minorities who'd been similarly exploited, received settlements totaling over $2 million in back pay and damages. Vanguard Technologies recovered most of their stolen money and became a client of Maya's firm, specifically requesting that I handle their legal work. And me? I became a partner at Rodriguez & Chen, a new boutique firm specializing in employment law and corporate ethics. We took on the cases that bigger firms wouldn't touch: the whistleblowers, the discrimination victims, the people who fought back against institutional corruption. My mother framed the news article about the case and hung it in her living room, next to my law school diploma. "You made us proud," she said, tears in her eyes. "Not because you became a lawyer, because you became a lawyer who couldn't be bought." Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd just kept my head down, taken James's help, found a job somewhere else and moved on. I tell them the truth. Regret is for people who don't act. I acted. And yeah, it cost me. My career at that firm, my reputation in certain circles, the comfortable path I thought I was on. But I gained something more valuable. The knowledge that when they tried to make me small, when they laughed at me in front of everyone, when they thought I was too weak or too scared to fight back, I proved them catastrophically wrong. Because they never suspected that the woman they dismissed as incompetent was actually the most dangerous person in the room. And by the time they figured it out, I'd already won. Subscribe to our channel for more real stories of revenge, justice, and personal redemption. Comment below, what would you have done in Natalie's place? And don't forget to like and share this story with anyone who needs to remember that the underestimated are often the most formidable.